I need to retire this watch.
No, that's good.
I'm gonna take it off for this interview. Actually,
I like it, bro.
no, we'll
It's
keep it on.
bling,
We'll
bling.
keep it on. Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
Wear it. Here's the thing. that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. You know, I people, entrepreneur guys are all the time. They're, oh, Paul, should I be a Mother Teresa? Hell no. That's not going to motivate you to get out of bed and take the nose that you need to build your company, right?
Yeah.
I use things, nice cars, boats, jets, helicopters. I use things to motivate myself to do the right thing long enough for me to realize the right reason to be doing it. And the right reason isn't things. It's making a difference, right?
Amen.
Once you get there, then you're like, hey, okay, those things are cool, but I really want to make an impact in the world. But making a difference would not have gotten me up in the morning when I needed to get up and get shit done, right? So it's okay. So I mean, we talked offline. I had a holy shit lifestyle.
We'll get to that. I want to know more about the details. But for those of you guys who are listening or watching and you don't know who this is, I want to give you a quick intro. This is Paul Hutchinson. He's the founder of the Child Liberation Foundation, producer of the Sound of Freedom movie, which is an incredible film. And man, you've just done so much work in different countries around the world and helping people. And I want to dive into your story. But before we get to the crazy things you've been through and then, the work that you've done, I would love to take it back just for a second and get to know you from like who you were as a kid. Because you obviously didn't pop out of the womb as like an entrepreneur who like knew what he was going to do. Like you had a childhood, you probably had high school, college. So can you walk me through briefly what your childhood was like?
I actually remember being in the womb.
Oh, okay.
That's all
he had Richard Mills. He was just like,
no, we were broke growing up. But I do. This is a crazy story. It's like 3 or 4 years old, and we were swimming at the neighbor's house all day, and my fingers were like little raisins, you're really tender, And then we came home, dinner. My mom gave me a long bath, and I sat there for a long time. And then she had just made the sheets, this brand new bed, brand new sheets and stuff. And I remember she tucked me in, turned off the lights, and I remember taking the sheets over the top of my head and pulled it back like that. And I put my little fingers that were very tender because I'd been in the water all day, right?
Yeah.
On the inside of the sheets like that. And all of a sudden had this perfect recollection of that being my world, of being in the womb, of feeling all of that. And in fact, I remember my first fear. I felt something that was hard and square. And later I saw a picture of my mom with a 70s belt buckle, one of those big square ones. I remember feeling that and having that be the first thing that was kind of out of alignment. It was kind of crazy. But
so you actually remember being in the womb?
That was for sure. Yeah. That's real.
Brother, I don't even know what I did yesterday. Like that's the fact that you know it, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Do you remember coming out of the womb?
I don't. People are like,
Okay.
do you remember the first light? No. My mom says I came out breech, so I was like, hell no, I'm staying in here. But yeah, I don't remember that. I remember a lot though. I remember like before I could walk. I remember being in the stroller, reaching for this teddy bear and it was given to me on my first Christmas at 1 year old. So I remember a lot of that stuff. But yeah,
that's crazy.
I don't remember, but I'm trying to remember before the womb. I'm getting to my deep meditations and really connecting to, the life before. But right now, that's as early as I got.
You just were a second ago off camera were telling me about psilocybin and essentially tripping on like mushrooms. Do you think through psilocybin and DMT and mushrooms and these kinds of things or psychedelics that you could actually revisit and learn things that happened in your past?
Absolutely. And we'll talk more on this, on the
proper
proper use of psychedelics. I don't even call it tripping because we work with helping people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. With the fact that I've been in the darkest parts of humanity and seeing children being sold, I have a passion for helping people overcome the darkness of their childhood. And there's nothing that's more effective than that. But one of the things on that note that it does, there are certain things that do what I call thin the veil. Like the veil. So when we were born, we have this veil of forgetfulness. We don't remember. We don't remember being brothers. We don't remember being with God. We don't remember anything. We literally have to rely on our five senses. So there are certain things we can do to thin that veil, deep meditation, some people at church and whatnot. The positive effects in the right environment of certain psychedelics can thin that veil. It's not hallucinogenic. You're seeing rainbows and whatever else. In reality, you can remember, you can see, you can feel things way beyond your five senses. So we can get into the science behind it and the reason why it's so effective in helping people overcome childhood trauma.
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. But yeah, let's take it back. So you're out the womb, you come out, you're happy. What happens next? Like, tell me about your childhood, like your high school, college. Like, were you always a genius? Because you seem very smart.
Hell no. I will tell you this story because this was really valuable. I remember it I grew up with 4 sisters. I had a great home. They were very, very religious, very strict religious.
Mormons.
No alcohol, no tea, no tobacco, no sex before marriage, blah blah blah, blah. And I was letter of the law guy, right? And then moving forward, I was about 22 years old, and I met a guy who he was tested at the University of Utah as the highest IQ they had ever tested, one of the highest in the world at the time, and I sat down and went to lunch with him. Now, this guy never graduated from elementary school. He didn't read or write.
Yeah.
Yet he was the inventor of countless medical devices. The original software that the voice recognition like Siri was built upon, all of those things, he was the inventor of them. So I sit down at lunch with this guy, and he says to me, he said, "Paul," he said, "you can have an IQ over 200 if you wanted." And I'm like, no, I'm really not that smart. I said, I worked really hard for my grades. I didn't even get a scholarship. I said, and I don't think you can change your IQ, can you?
Yeah.
He said, no. He said that the difference between me and you is that I listen better than you. And I said, you listen better than me? I touched my ear. He said, no, I listen better than you. And he touched his heart. He said, Paul, he said, do you think that I'm the inventor of those medical devices? I said, you hold the patents, right? He goes, yeah. I said, you're not the inventor? He goes, no. I said, what, you stole them? He said, well, kind of. He said, how long has the universe been around? I said, millions of years. He said, billions upon billions of years. He said, those medical devices were invented billions of years ago. I was a better listener than you. He said, you have to understand that we live in a world of universal truth. He says there are so many creative artists that people who wrote entire musical scores note perfect the first time because they were already written. Yeah. He said, when you understand that and you start tuning in, he says most people discount their intuition because they know not from where it came. They think that it came from their books they read, the people they talked to, the limited everything. He said, once you understand that it literally comes from a place of infinite knowledge, he says, you'll learn to trust it more. He said, when you start trusting it, it will guide you in ways you can never imagine. He says, it's kind of like we're this supercomputer, and we have infinite possibilities, but our only way that we're putting information in is literally one book at a time, one conversation at a time. He says that's like those old little 3-inch floppy disks. You put them in, He says that's about the speed. He said when you learn how to listen, tap in. He said you will have access like you have a high-speed, a fiber optic internet line with unlimited information there and a filter on it to guarantee that everything that's coming in is true. So when I started understanding that is what led me down the road of massive success in my financial career, in the philanthropic career, in all of those things. And I've built massive companies and sold them. I've built foundations that are making a massive impact in the world, and I attribute all of it to that ability to listen.
Yeah. Wow, so beautiful. I have a question for you. As a 28-year-old man, I've learned, and I'm starting to now just understand my intuition a bit more to a point where, like, if I feel it here, I know it's coming from God because I've developed that voice. But a year ago, I didn't have that as much, and I feel like a lot of people that are listening probably don't have that voice yet. So, how do you develop that voice? How do you fine tune your intuition to a point where you can rely on it fully? And also, how do you decipher between the God voice versus your emotions? Because if I give into my intuitions, like, hey, you should go, like, I have a girlfriend, but if I go talk to that girl and I'm like, I want to like have sex with her, like that's lust. That could lead me in the wrong direction. So what's the balance of intuition versus emotion, and how do you differentiate?
Well, I think it's important to know that all of us were born with the ability to feel and recognize that spirit of truth. And it's also important to understand how to, since we touched on the word God, there's the adversary, the Lucifer. He can appear as an angel of light. He's not the great murderer. He's not the great coveter. He's the great deceiver, right? And so it's super important that we are not deceived by that energy. And the things that he cannot duplicate is peace, infinite love. Those are high vibration energies. And so even when I teach my meditation practices, I teach people how to get out of their conscious mind and drop into that place of the heart in a very real way. But in that space, even when we're doing the healing ceremonies with the plant medicines, it's so important that we set sacred space wherein we and your words are powerful. And focusing on that energy, that high frequency of infinite love and gratitude is something that once you're in that frequency, you can listen better. It's kind of like, those old radios that you had to tune it in just right to hear the right channel, right? And if you were off a little bit, it would just be fuzz. And if you're on the other channel, it might be something you don't want to listen to. So for me, the channel, the frequency of God is infinite unconditional love, right? And so by tuning into that feeling of unconditional love, God's love for me, my love for humanity, all of those things, once you really start tuning in to that high frequency, then you'll be able to ensure that the information that is coming in is pure and is in line with your highest and best self.
Yeah. What are the tactical things you're doing to achieve that? Like, are you journaling? Are you putting music and listening to God through that? Are you meditating? Like, what is your methods logically?
So I have a method of meditation every day. Most people, not most people, but when the people that pray, and I prayed for most of my life. The problem is prayer is very one-sided for most people. It's God fix this, sorry about this, and please bless this, and sorry about that, and amen, and then you move on. Can you imagine having a relationship that was that one-sided? Let's say that you had a girlfriend. And you said to that girlfriend, you called her up and said, praise, praise, praise. Wow, you're amazing. Wow, you're amazing. Wow, you're amazing. And then, sorry. Hey, I screwed up on this. I screwed up on this. Hey, and can you fix this? Can you fix this? Can you fix this? And then you hang up the phone.
Sounds like my relationship.
Yeah, that would suck. You'd be done pretty quick, right? Yeah. That's not a relationship. Yeah. That's how we pray, though. Praise, praise, praise. Sorry. Bless, bless, bless. Bye. Right? And so if you want to have a relationship with somebody, with your girlfriend, with God, you have to be able to tune in and listen. And so taking that time to really listen is probably more important in your relationship with God than telling God everything that you want to tell him. Right? And so what I do is I and this is an important understanding. We have our conscious mind that is communicating right now, is talking, whatever else. We have our subconscious mind that's dictating most of our day, right? 95% of our day is led by that subconscious mind, right? And a lot of us, but between the ages of 0 to 7 years old, your subconscious mind is just soaking in all this information. And then it's driving your life. So if you're dealing with fear, anxiety, depression, all of these things, it's probably deep in that subconscious mind where it's coming from. Your subconscious mind remembers everything. Literally, your subconscious mind knows exactly how many stoplights you've stopped at your entire life. It knows that number, right? Wow. It knows how many steps you took coming in today. It knows everything. It knows if you were sitting with a business partner and you were trying to decide if you wanted to do business with that guy or not. It knows if his irises and his pupils were dilating or not in the conversation. It was picking up all these things your conscious mind doesn't. And so we have a book that I had a lot of my operators read called The Gift of Fear. And that Gift of Fear talks about how all of this stuff is picked up by your subconscious and it's going to tell you things that your conscious mind doesn't. Well, beyond your subconscious that knows all of that, your superconscious mind is the one that guy I met in my 20s that he was teaching me about, literally has access to everything. It doesn't just know the number of lights that you stopped at your whole life. It literally knows exactly how many stoplights everybody on the planet has stopped off their entire life, right? It knows all of that. And so the key in tapping into that is going from your conscious mind deep into a deep subconscious, and then beyond there tapping into the superconscious. And so what I teach is, number one, sensory deprivation. I get in a soft couch with pillows, or in bed. I don't like to lay down because I don't want to fall asleep. I want to help people go from a beta state down to an alpha state, down to a theta state, which is right before you're going to sleep. Once in that theta state, now your brain waves are in a point where you're truly listening instead of having your conscious mind chattering all the time. And so going into that sensory deprivation, I have an eye mask on, I have headphones on, I'm in a place where people aren't going to bother me, and a locked door in my meditation room, and then I have a process listening to music that doesn't have any beats, any words. It's some different types of meditation music, and then I focus on that frequency I was telling you about, that high frequency of love and gratitude, and I get myself resonating at this super high frequency, and then I say the words, I ask and intend to set sacred space, wherein only truth and light and love aligned with my higher self. So I'm in this sensory deprivation spot, and I'm listening to this music with no beats and no words, just frequency music. I go into this feeling of infinite gratitude and infinite unconditional love. And then I say, I ask and intend to set sacred space, wherein only truth, light, love, and virtue aligned with my higher self is allowed to enter. Because I'm thinning the veil. This is super important, guys. Make sure that if you're thinning the veil, the information coming in isn't taking you down a road that you don't want to be on, right? And so once I'm into that space, I have two other things that I use to turn off all my chatter. And I do a breath work, about a 15-minute breath work that includes a breath retention, meaning deep breathing, and on the breath out, boom, holding it for a minute, then holding it for 90 seconds, and then 2 minutes, because in that state, you don't have the ability. You're thinking about not breathing. You're thinking about being super calm. It's a tool that I use to turn off all that extra chatter. And then the last thing that I do is something called hape. It's something that is grown by the shamans in South America. It's this powder form of tobacco. It's not addictive like a lot of the other things. But it's incredibly powerful for me in activating the pineal gland, your third eye, and cleansing everything so that I can really drop into that space. And so on the third eye thing, this is important as well. Back at the time of the old radios, do you remember they had little crystals in there? Those crystals pick up different frequencies. They're a lot more sensitive. Well, we were born as a receiver and a transmitter. Yeah. Right? We have that inside of that pineal gland. This is one of the reasons why they're trying to get rid of the fluoride in the water, because it literally calcifies the pineal gland and those little receptors that you're able to receive that divine information is calcified in a way where you're not able to tune in like you really could. Right. So that's a whole other discussion, but this is totally off of my undercover child rescue missions. But the reality is, this is what I used to build successful companies, to all that stuff. This is a long answer to your whole, Paul, you're really intelligent. No, I'm not. You're
just really in tune with yourself and what God.
I just figured out how to tune in to a space of knowledge that was beyond my own.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Wow. I love that. So, you're talking about stuff like crystals and the third eye and some of these things and doing things like, what was the tobacco thing?
Hape.
They
call it rape, but down there, but up here it's spelled R-A-P-E. We don't want to say that on film, so we say hape.
Yeah, absolutely. So are these things, because when I hear things like, even recently I've been hearing a lot about yogis drinking their urine and whatnot. You know what I mean? We'll talk about that maybe separately, but which I don't drink your urine, please, guys.
It's a bad idea.
Please don't. But would you say some of this stuff is anti-biblical?
No.
So tell me about that, because you're a Christian, right?
Very much.
So you were Mormon and then you became Christian.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that actually.
Yeah.
How did you transition to a Christian? And then isn't there a fine line between Christianity and some of these like more worldly things that you're referring to?
Some. But understand this. I have people ask me, Paul, are you a Christian? And my answer is, in the purest sense of the word, the purest sense. The teachings that Yeshua, his name wasn't Jesus, guys, right? People are saved by the name of Jesus. It wasn't even his name, right? His name was Yeshua. The pure teachings of Christ that were undefiled by political rulers who decided this should be burned and this should be stay and this is what should be put into the canonized version, all of that stuff. Once you really start tuning in to that still small voice of truth, everybody will come to the same truth, and they will understand that the pure teachings are absolutely beautiful, transformational in so many ways, and that many of those things were changed. So that's important. It's also important to understand that there's significant evidence that Yeshua, between the time that he was 12 years old and 32, there's about 20 years of missing time there, right, in the Bible. There's significant evidence that says that he actually traveled. He traveled to India. He traveled to Asia. He trained with yogi masters. He trained with people who understood Buddhist culture, etc. And there's significant evidence that says that that's where a lot of that he went in and he was training, he was teaching, he was, run out of town, similar to what happened in Jerusalem. But and there's writings there that were lost. And so understanding the road, the people that he spoke with, etc. And you'll also understand that there's a lot of truths that were taken out. That he was an Essean Jew at the time. He wasn't a Sadducee. He wasn't a Pharisee. He was a Essean. And if you look into their doctrine and their understanding, it's very much in line with a lot of these spiritual teachings that many people are aligning with today. That are when I say that, I'm talking about releasing from guilt, shame, judgment, fear, anger. There's a lot of that low vibration energy that is in some Christianity today, some Muslim cultures today that are holding on to some of that negative energy. Yeshua was not one of judgment and shame and guilt and anger and division.
Yeah.
He was of unity and love and peace. And so understanding those principles, that's what I align with.
Yeah, I love that. And this is completely left field, but I have to ask you because we're on the topic of love and unity in Christianity. I was driving up here from Orange County, and there was a big church with a giant LGBTQ flag. Is the church making it inclusive? Like, what's the signal there? So I'm very curious. What's your take on the church and LGBTQ?
Here's what I will say. Throughout history, throughout the last 2,000 years, and this is what we all have to be aware of, we have to ask ourselves how the church moved from the divine teachings of Yeshua into what we see today, and what kind of things have changed. I mean, even in my church, the Mormon church back in the 1800s did not allow blacks to have the priesthood, right?
Yeah.
But that changed later. What did God change, right? Or was it just not cool in the early 1800s to let them have it, and later it was, right? So these things change all the time, and sadly, there are so many institutions that are more concerned about their popularity, about being okay with their whatever. Here's how I see it. There are a lot of, and understand this, I came from a world of rules, right?
Yeah.
I really doubt that God's not going to let me into heaven because I drink coffee, right?
Yeah.
So that's an extreme of how I was raised, right? However, when you take a bigger look at all of it, you have to ask yourself, okay, are there things that are being mandated that are of God or not, right? Here's an important one. That there are stories in the Old Testament that say that I'm better than you because I'm white and you're not.
Yeah.
right?
It's not true.
There are exactly. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. You look at some of the God's armies versus not, and a lot of it was because those were Canaanites and these were Israelites. It's bull.
Yeah.
It's crap. The reality is Yeshua likely had skin color closer to yours than mine.
Yeah.
Yet everybody depicts him as white.
He probably
right?
had tattoos and a piercing.
Probably
too,
did.
Yeah.
Right?
And a bust down AP.
You know what's funny about that? It was funny. I changed subjects for just a second, but this is super funny. So the very first time I went undercover to go on a child rescue mission, I thought, okay, what are traffickers going to look like? I thought they'd have tattoos on their necks and earrings in their noses and whatever. And the first trafficker I met was a businessman in a polo shirt, clean shaven, no tattoos, no earrings, right?
Yeah.
The second I met was a beautiful woman working with a modeling agency.
Wow.
Right? I've realized some of my best friends in the world today have tattoos and earrings.
Yeah.
Yet I grew up in a world where, that must mean that you're doing bad things. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I have seen the worst that humanity has to offer in these places where people sell kids. And sadly, many of them did not have. In fact, what was interesting too is that there were some that actually had like crosses and everything else, and I was like, what are they trying to justify the fact that they're selling kids by saying, this they're doing their rosary beads or whatever at night? There were so many religious symbols that a lot of these guys had that it was super confusing, because I thought that somebody doing something like that would be have satanic symbols.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we all have to ask ourselves who. I think the real key is the fruit on the tree, right?
Yeah,
how is somebody showing up in their interpersonal relationships? What is the value that they're bringing to the world? That's what Yeshua taught.
Yeah.
Is what leaving the 99 and saving the one, and feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. That's really the fruit on the tree.
Yeah.
It's not how many rosary beads I counted this morning.
I don't know if you've been seeing these videos of Vitaly, for example, or Gideon, where they go on stream and they chase down predators and then they beat them up. It sounds like that's what you do with child traffickers. So can we talk a little bit about how you got into like finding human trafficking suspects and taking them, putting them in jail?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. About 11 years ago, I got a phone call from our Attorney General, and he knew a little bit about my background and knew that I have a certain set of skills that makes me somewhat safe in a dangerous place. But what I had moved away from that life, and I was building a successful company. And he said, Paul, I know that you have spent, you've donated a lot of money and time to child-related charities. He said, I need to talk to you about something that's pretty dark. He said it's the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world, and good people don't even know that it's happening. He said, he started talking about child trafficking. And I'm thinking, what the hell? People like selling kids for what? I mean, I couldn't even imagine. He says, there's more today. And I'm not talking about just children being abused at home, which is horrible. He's talking sold human beings. There's more today than all 300 years of the transatlantic slave trade put together. And he said there was a group at the time of operators who were in Cartagena, Colombia, that had found some children that needed to be rescued. They were in this trafficking ring down there, and it was going to cost $50,000 to rescue these kids. And so, I helped to make that happen. And for me, I was on the Make-A-Wish board of directors at the time in our area. And $10,000 with Make-A-Wish, I could send a little girl to Disneyland with her family, which is important. She's struggling with cancer. This is a beautiful organization with helping children with life-threatening illnesses. But with this situation, $50,000, we can pull 20 kids out of hell.
Yeah.
There just wasn't a comparison. So I helped to make that happen. And then a few weeks later, one of the operators called me. And he said, Paul, we're here in Cartagena, Colombia. There's not just 20 children here. There's more than 50. Wow. There's more than 100 children tied to other rings in the other cities. He said, we have a plan that we could rescue all 100 children at the same time on the same day.
Yeah.
He said, but I need your help. And I said, well, how much do you need? He said, I need you. Could you be in Colombia in 2 days? He said the head trafficker has a piece of property he wants to develop into a child brothel sex resort.
Oh my gosh!
And he needs a few $1 million to build it out. He believes he can make tens of millions of dollars a year selling children to wealthy Americans. He said, what our plan is you come down here, you tell him, listen, I'm willing to fund this under one condition. We're going to have a party.
Yeah.
So he said, this head trafficker has a piece of property he wants to develop into a child brothel sex resort. He needs a few $1 million to build it out. He believes he can make tens of millions of dollars a year selling children to wealthy Americans. And he said, the plan is, he said, you come down here, pretend like you're interested in funding this project under one condition. He'll have a party. You'll bring a bunch of your wealthy friends down. He'll bring all of his existing inventory. He'll call the other traffickers, get them to bring their children. And if you're satisfied with the supply that he has, then you'll fund his project.
Wow.
So
you did that.
That's what I did. It was funny. It wasn't funny. The whole thing was hideous. But I was at the time, I was at a conference in Atlanta, Georgia. I was it had like third generation billionaire families there. And I was raising money for my investment fund. And I told him, I says, what should I wear? You know, he says, come as a wealthy playboy.
Okay.
And I had a watch that looked like yours, right? Yeah. Right. I had a $50,000 watch on. Yeah. Right. I have a suit that cost more than my first car. I have $2,000 cufflinks on, and I'm like, I think I got the outfit. Right?
That's crazy.
So I fly in, and 2 days later, I'm face to face with the most evil people I've ever met.
And are these people like carrying like machine guns, or are they just normal guys? Like, what's their vibe?
Oh no, they were. Like I said earlier, I thought they'd have earrings and tattoos. It was a businessman. It looked like a business meeting at first. I'm like, this is crazy, you know. Wow. Now I was picked up in an armored car by Navy SEAL and Green Beret that was there in the car. They were my real bodyguards and my show bodyguards, right? And we pull in, and I'm thinking, these guys aren't traffickers, you know. Now I've had many situations since then. I led 70 undercover missions in 15 countries over the next 10 years. And some of those, we absolutely had traffickers that showed up with guns. Absolutely. There's multiple times where I had guns that were on us in these undercover missions. But this first one, they weren't. It was you know, they were comfortable enough already with the team that had connected them. And they told him, listen, you're meeting Pablo, no knives, no guns, no problem. No problem. Right. And so we did the same thing at the party. Even with the kids, they checked their purses to make sure that there weren't any weapons before they came into the party. They said, listen, Pablo's just brought his rich friends down. We don't want to have any problems at all. And so they would make sure that there wasn't any weapons. Yeah. There was only a couple of our operations where we had traffickers that showed up with weapons. And we had guys on them immediately that made sure that they were disarmed. But so I'm sitting there at this table. I'm negotiating with these guys, and halfway through, one of them leans forward and he says, Pablo, he said, I have a gift for you. I said, really? What's your gift? And he gives me his phone, and there's a picture of an 11-year-old girl on his phone.
Wow.
He said, this is Princess. She's still a virgin. We just took delivery of some. She's my gift for you for this party. And start talking about horrific things I could do to this child.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought, oh my God, if we could get these children out before they're ever raped the first time, that would be a miracle. And something he said made me realize he had more than her. I said, Fuego, I said, you just took delivery? You have more of those, you know, virgins? He goes, oh yeah, we got 3 or 4 more. I said, you're going to bring those to my party, right? He goes, no. He says, they're too expensive. I'm too expensive. I'm already paying this guy $25,000, right? I'm paying him $500 per child just for 2 hours in the afternoon with these kids for a minimum of 50 kids, right? And he's like, no, he says, you already paid $25,000. He says, you want to F those other virgins? It's going to cost you maybe $2,000, maybe $5,000 for that little one. It's going to cost you maybe $10,000 more. Oh now, at this point, there no acting involved. I was legitimately pissed, and my ego came full force. He's talking about these kids like they're commodities, right? Yeah. And I put my hands on my chest, and I'm like, you don't think I can afford an extra $10,000? He's like, wow. No, Jefe, no. I said, I want every one of those virgins at my party. I said, they damn well better be virgins when they get there. They're not for you. They're for me and my guys. You understand? He goes, oh, yeah, Jefe, I understand this. stupid smile on his face. And so
Yeah.
2 weeks later, we meet with the team met with the federal agents and the U.S. Embassy. They provided 40 agents for us. 4 of them were like our maids, our waiters, our cooks. They weren't very good cooks, but they're armed. You know, the other ones were there to storm the party at the right time. And these guys showed up with 54 children. We had 2 other cities at the same time.
Wow.
Over 120 children that day.
So you guys took him down at the party.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Is it like an FBI raid? Like they come in,
it's
they
hardcore. Holy shit. So they bring in all the kids. We're sitting there at this table with the traffickers, negotiating this deal. We have undercover cameras so that we could get them on film to talk about what was going on at the party. So they couldn't say later, oh, you know, we thought it was a pool party. No, you set on film what those kids were there for, what they, you know, what we could do to them, all this horrible stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so and there was one point. This was a huge moment for me in terms of my transition in my life. I'm sitting there at this table. One of the traffickers gets up and he goes, Pablo, I have to show you the gifts that I brought you. And he goes in the house where the children are. He was in there for about 10 minutes. And I could hear a couple of the kids crying. They were so scared of coming out and meeting us.
Yeah.
You can imagine. You can imagine sitting there with me and hearing kids crying. Everything in you is like, what do we do? Can we send somebody in to help these kids?
Yeah.
It was everything in my power not to just shoot these guys.
Yeah, I bet.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you know, we could hear these children and they're crying. And about 10 minutes later, they come back out and they had 4 virgins. They had 3 little girls, 1 little boy. This little boy, I think they got him from Haiti. He was 11.
Yeah.
They gave him cocaine because he was so scared it was going to hurt. What kind of monster thinks that that's attractive?
It's terrible.
You know, everything in my body wanted to just hug these kids and say, you're going to be fine. I couldn't say that. I'm sitting there. This little girl, the same one that he showed me 2 weeks ago in the picture, right? He in the movie Sound of Freedom, my character is the $1 billion fund manager who quits his job to go rescue the kids. And in the movie, the Jim Caviezel couldn't convince him, and the only thing that convinced him is he gave this picture of this little 11-year-old girl to my driver, and that when I saw that picture, it changed my opinion. Well, in real life, I was already there. I was with these traffickers. He shows me this picture, and I'm like, now you've galvanized my commitment. Fast forward, we're sitting there with these kids. The very same girl, that same little girl that he showed me in that picture, was now being paraded in front of me. This 11-year-old virgin.
And she thinks that you're there to do something terrible. She has
knows
no
it.
idea that you're there to save her.
That's why she was so scared.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there in this chair. I'm almost eye level with her as she's standing up. And imagine this picture. She's standing there. She's got her hair is in little braids. She's got a kitty cat picture on her shirt. Mm-hmm. She's a child.
Yeah.
A child in every way. And she's standing in front of me, and I'm almost eye level with her, and I can see into her soul. All I could see was fear. She was scared to death.
Yeah.
Her makeup on her face was just was smeared. She was crying, thinking that it was me that was going to abuse her.
Yeah.
And everything I wanted to just say, no, you're going to be fine. You're going to see your parents again. I couldn't say that. And I took her little hands and I just said, está bien. It's okay. You know, I told the traffickers, I said, it's not time for the party to start. You know, the agents hadn't rushed. They were supposed to come already. We're trying to delay. And so I told them, listen, take these guys back in.
Yeah.
We need to negotiate a business deal here. You guys have shown me that you have the inventory. Let's do a business plan right now. And that business plan was one of the most darkest moments of my life, hearing in detail where they get those kids, what they do to them, how much they sell them for, where the clients are coming in. It was horrific. And we knew we couldn't take millions of people to see what I had seen.
Yeah.
But we could help millions of people feel what I had felt. And that's why we did The Sound of Freedom. In fact, the movie, after that moment with that child and seeing her fear, we sent her back in. After the agents came and stormed the party and arrested all of us, and they came from all directions. I'll show you some videos, guns being drawn and on the ground, and we're laying there getting our hands handcuffed and whatnot, and the traffickers being thrown on the ground, etc. After they took the traffickers away, then me and Scott, one of the operators, we went in to grab our bags. And this was in a separate part of the house, but you could hear kind of, because it was kind of open in the open roof area of this palapa, we could hear the children in the other side. And the Child Protective Services people were in with them, and they were laughing, they were singing with these children. And that, compared to the crying half an hour before, that laughing and the singing, that sound of freedom was the most beautiful sound that I ever heard. Wow. So I told the operator, I said, I've spent my life making money, making rich people richer. I want to make a difference.
Amen.
I was going to buy a Lamborghini Aventador that year. I had the picture of it. I knew exactly what I wanted. I told him, I don't want to buy that. I want to write you the check instead. What do you need? How can I help? Then the guy said, Paul, he said, sadly, a huge percentage of the demand for stuff like this comes from wealthy guys with arrogant egos and lust. And he told me about the Jeffrey Epstein people and stuff. He says, they look and talk and walk and just like you.
Yeah.
He said, if you're willing to be the bait, I'll change your whole life.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of what ended up being over 70 undercover missions in 15 countries over a period of 10 years.
Wow. Incredible. Thank you for what you've done for the kids, man. I mean, how many kids have you guys saved through those missions?
Through our foundation, the Child Liberation Foundation, and others that I have helped to fund and start, over 7,000 victims are now back with their families. However,
Unreal.
With the movie Sound of Freedom, we now have over 70 million people who have seen the movie.
Yeah.
So we have hundreds of millions of children who are safer now because of that awareness.
Yeah. Wow. How did Sound of Freedom come together from all this? Like, did someone approach you and say, hey, we want to put this movie together? Or
No. The Homeland Security agent and myself were having some conversations early on. He wanted to go public. He wanted to be on CNN, ABC. I wanted to continue doing the operations. We went into Sony and Lionsgate and Paramount with the stories, and they were super interested. I mean, It's an amazing story. They wanted to turn that into a movie. And beyond that, we had a bunch of other missions that we wanted to kind of formulate into the storyline. So we went into Sony, Lionsgate, Paramount. They were interested in the story, but they wanted full literary control. They could have put Jim Caviezel and my character in a gay sex scene in the middle of the movie. We couldn't do anything about it, right?
Yeah.
So and they could have made it so that one of our operators touched a child in the middle. They could have done all kinds of stuff that wasn't true. So we're like, no, we're not gonna have that. We're gonna tell the story as it is. And so I was at a Grammys after party here in LA.
Yeah.
And it was a rock against child trafficking party. Pierce Brosnan was there. The former president of Mexico was there. I met with them. And,
wow.
And there was a guy there by the name of Eduardo Verástegui. Now, Eduardo is now the producer of Sound of Freedom. He's the one that plays me, Pablo Delgado, in the movie. Pablo, the billionaire fund manager. And I told him the story, and he goes, "Hermano, we need to make a movie of this." I said, "Yeah, I know we do." I said, "Do you know anybody?" He goes, "Yeah, me." He says, "Come and see the movie that we just made."
Wow.
And so I went and saw with him. I saw a movie called Little Boy, which is a beautiful movie about faith. And they did such a beautiful job with it. We decided, you know what? This is the team. We're gonna go big with this. And that's what happened. In fact, Alejandro Monteverde, what a beautiful, incredible man. He's our director, and just did such a great job of bringing this story to light.
Yeah. It's such a good movie. For those of you guys who haven't seen it, you definitely got to watch it. I want to talk about you going through all these things and seeing, to me, what's like some of the darkest stuff in the world, right? Like seeing kids getting trafficked. It's terrible. To some degree, has this made you lose faith in humanity? Like,
for a long time, yeah.
How did you overcome that? Like, how did you?
Well, this is the rest of the story we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
So it was about 2 years into undercover work, we were blowing through undercover operators. I had Green Berets with 300 missions in the Middle East, fighting wars, that already had some PTSD. And they come on one mission with me undercover, seeing a menu with children, with their pictures and the things that the different prices for different things, and they were done. They're like, I can't go on anymore. I'm so sorry. So we were blowing through operators trying to find guys that would stick. And I had two guys that had done a bunch, Andy and Jimmy. Jimmy had done 13 missions with me. Andy had done 22 missions. And they called me on the phone together on a conference call. And they said, Paul, do you trust us? And I said, yeah, I trust you with my life. Literally, undercover, I'm in charge of talking. They're in charge of making sure I don't die, right? Yeah. And they said, you need to come to this healing retreat. And I said, I don't need to heal. Everybody wants to be me. I'm Paul F. Hutchinson, right? They said, no, you're in your second marriage, headed for a divorce. Your kids don't talk to you. You need to heal. I'm like, whatever. Right? That's my energy. They said, this will be the most transformational experience of your life. And I said, you can't say it's going to be the most transformational. I mean, I know Tony Robbins personally. I've literally walked across coals with him right next to me. I've done transformational shit. You can't tell me this is going to be the most transformational experience. And then they said, this is something that helps people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. And it literally is within a matter of days to break free of a lot of this stuff. And now I called total BS on it. I said, that my company, my first successful company that I sold in my early 20s, sold it for a crap ton of money at 29 years old. We had 50,000 people a month calling in off of our infomercial to get help with anxiety, depression, PTSD. And you can't do it in a few days. Yeah. This is something that we had a personal coach 12 weeks, 1 to 2 hours a day to help them change those negative habit patterns of thought, this cognitive restructuring to help them change. And they said, well, this doctor is using some different types of plant medicine. I said, what do you mean plant medicine? Like herbs and whatever? They said, well, it's psilocybin. And different types of psychedelics. And then I'm like totally off the chart because, I grew up LDS with no mind altering anything at all. And so I thought that psilocybin was as dangerous as cocaine. Yeah. Because it was a Schedule I drug our whole life. Yeah. And when I started doing the research and realized that not only is it not as dangerous as cocaine, it's literally safer than table sugar. I started investigating more, and I saw these Johns Hopkins studies that were talking about its powerful effectiveness at helping people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma, the same things that I had worked on for all those years. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to this. I'll go to this with you guys. I don't have anxiety, depression. I don't have any of those things, but I'll go because I trust you guys, right? Well, God had another story for me, right? So what happened, I went into this experience, and I was doing a lot of crap in my life. I was doing good, but I had massive parties at my house with half-dressed girls and NBA players, and it was all this stuff that was just on and on and on. And so what happened is now I'm not a fan whatsoever of somebody going to a rave party and getting high with their friends. This is not what we're talking about. Right. Because what happens is the medicine creates a temporary state of neuroplasticity. Yeah. It's very, very impressionable, in which you can get down and create some real changes. Well, with my first experience was the most beautiful, horrific experience of my entire life. Horrific being, I felt in every cell of my being, I felt the pain that my children felt when I stepped out on their mom, right? I as if I was them. I felt that pain of seeing that father fall from grace, so to speak, right? And then I felt the joy of the kids that we helped to rescue, and then I felt the pain as if I was them. I felt the pain of the families that I broke apart because some guy came to my party and slept with a cheerleader and broke up his marriage. And the ripple effect of every single action of my life came full force in helping me feel that true empathy. The pain of feeling the ripple effect of every single action was almost more than I could bear. It literally felt like Satan himself had his foot on my chest. And I felt like I was being pushed down to hell. And I had a playlist that had this meditation music that the facilitator had given me. And I switched it over to what I call my Jesus list, right? It was this beautiful songs of redemption. And I could literally feel God's hand coming down and pulling me out of the pit of hell. And I felt all this crap just coming off of me, all these stupid things that I did in my life. And I came back up where I could breathe again. And I actually said to myself, Paul, did you learn your lesson? I'm in this state of neuroplasticity, being guided by a facilitator, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, maybe I need to learn it. So I switched it back to that same song, that meditation one, and boom, I could feel it so deep. And I stayed down there as long as I could, feeling the pain of anybody that I had offended because of my ego, because of my arrogance, because of my greed, because of my lust, because of my envy. All of these things, I could feel it as if I was them. And then I came out of that experience, and the facilitator, I was talking to her, and I said, sometimes I feel like the world's on my shoulders. And there was a statue of Atlas with the whole world on his shoulders, right? I says, I feel like that statue right there. Yeah. I had 4,000 employees, but look how God made me so strong. I have these, I've got Poseidon and I've got Zeus watching me at these two statues there. And the facilitator, knowing that one of my intentions was a better relationship with God, allowed me to finish there. And then she said, Paul, I honor that you're seeing some of those qualities and those great gods. She says, but you know as well as I do that those were both mythological gods, right?
Not real.
She said, what about your relationship with him? And she pointed out the statue that was there of Jesus, of Yeshua. And I said, I'm in this beautiful, open-hearted state of being honest with myself and everyone else. And I said, oh, him. I don't qualify for a relationship with him. And she said, well, why not? I said, well, when I left the church of my youth, my bishop told me that until I was rebaptized into that church, I wouldn't have the Spirit of God with me. She said, do you really think that that's true? I said, well, no, I do good things. I do a lot of good charity work. I said, in fact, I feel that prompting every single time I go undercover. I feel that guidance from God. It's absolutely not true. She goes, well, why don't you work on that relationship? So here I'm in this, I'm on mushrooms. I can barely walk, right? And she helps me, takes this statue down from the mantle and sits me on the big bag. And I spent the next 2 hours rebuilding a relationship with my brother that I hadn't had in a really long time. And it couldn't have happened if I hadn't had a facilitated experience in the proper use of these tools. And it was so incredibly transformative to me that myself, it completely, I had to leave. The wife I was with at the time was way out of alignment with the person that I now wanted to be.
Wow.
Even some of the guys that were working with that former foundation were way out of alignment with the new person I wanted to be. And so I had to cut cords with some very important people in my life in order to make room for this highest and best version of myself. And if I hadn't gone through that experience, I would have never qualified for a relationship with my wife now. My wife, we met in Haiti.
Yeah.
I was there doing some undercover work, and I sadly was at a funeral for one of my operators.
Yeah.
She was donating her time at the orphanage. I tell people meeting a beautiful Colombian actress is kind of cool, but when she's donating her time at an orphanage in Haiti, that's way cooler.
Oh yeah.
So we became master facilitators in the proper use of plant medicine to help people overcome anxiety, depression, addictions, etc. So
Wow.
then I went into the Attorney General in Utah and I said, bro, I'm going to bring this to Utah. You can either arrest me or tell me how to make it legal.
Yeah.
And he said, well, why don't we figure out how to make it legal? I don't want to
So
arrest
funny.
you. So we went down the road, and Utah was almost not only decriminalized, but it was almost the first state to fully legalize the proper use of psychedelics when it came to trauma therapy, addictions, PTSD, etc. But then our governor decided he wanted to veto our bill, which is understandable. You know, he wanted more oversight from a federal standpoint, so we decided to put that on hold. We now run retreats in Latin America. People could learn about those on liberatinghumanity.com and get more information on how to help themselves heal from all of the crap that we all hold.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's our childhood trauma, our addictions, our PTSD, whatever it is, we can release it.
Yeah. Let's talk about childhood trauma, because I think it's so interesting, you know, because it's something that I think we're all working on daily, honestly. But can you ever truly, like, ever fully overcome childhood trauma? And if so, like, how do you go about that? Like, because mushrooms can't be the only answer. There's got to be other ways.
Absolutely. No. Mushrooms are only, they don't fix anything. They simply create that state of neuroplasticity. And you could get there with breath work.
Yeah.
You could get there with meditation. You can get there with a lot of things. You're not going to get there by taking Xanax and Prozac your whole life.
Yeah.
You know, that's crap. Those things are making billions of dollars a year, keeping people addicted to things that are just numbing their emotions.
Yeah.
And in fact, if people are coming down to our retreats, we have to have them off of their SSRIs for at least 4 days, some of them up to 2 weeks before they come down, because you can't have this numbing of all of your emotions and open up the wound and fix it when you've got something that's covering everything up, right? Yeah. Plus, there's some other scientific reasons behind it where you can't have them on those things. So the answer is yes, and I have seen it. I have seen it over and over again. People who were ritually abused as children, not just a little bit of childhood trauma. We're talking hardcore stuff, being able to help them reprogram that subconscious mind, help them break free of it, help them come to a place where those things are not controlling them. That the wound is still there. I mean, the scar is still there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be affecting you in the way that it did. And so, yes, it takes some work.
Yeah.
The experience doesn't just fix anything. What it does is it teaches you the path that can get you to the place where those things are no longer a problem. And I've seen it a lot. In fact, on the Liberating Humanity podcast and on my Instagram, etc., I interview a lot of people who had dealt with severe childhood trauma that were able to fully overcome it and live a life of purpose and freedom of all that toxicity.
Yeah. Isn't the answer for overcoming things like trauma just forgiveness and grace?
Absolutely it is.
You know what I mean?
I take people through a deep meditation exercise where I help them get into that theta state, really deep meditation, and then I walk them through what we call a Ho'oponopono exercise. Ho'oponopono is simply forgiveness and grace. What it is cutting cords and releasing this negative energy between you and people of your past who have offended you, who have hurt you, who have really hurt you, even a past version of yourself, right? That you've got to cut those cords so they're not holding you in that space, or addictions, etc. And when we take them into that space, Ho'oponopono is simply this. It's you read them their rights, you visually have them there, you're in a safe place, and then after that energy, you get it all off your chest, then you say, I forgive you. And you go through all those things you forgive them for, and then, please forgive me, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry for holding on to this energy this whole time. I'm sorry for what I did to hurt you. I am grateful for everything that I've learned from you, and then I release it all with love. And so, you know, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you.
Yeah.
That's all that it is. And that is a very different energy than, oh, that thing that you did to me, I want, please forgive me, but oh, F you. No, that's not the energy. That's the energy that feeds that pain.
But I feel like that's how most people talk to themselves.
Yeah.
Which is so sad. Now that you say alpha, beta, theta, I had a theta moment this morning in a cold plunge, which for me is how I get there.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But I was like, dang, like I forgive my parents for everything that they've done. And I also forgive myself because like I'm a human. when I go on planes, I'm always sitting next to babies for some reason. And the last couple of weeks, I've been on like probably 12 plane rides, not private jets like you, but there's been a lot of babies, and I'm just looking at them. I'm like, dude, like that's me. You know what I mean? Like I'm just a kid that was a baby once, and I'm just a little slightly older now. And it's like if that baby drops his yogurt or like slaps his mom on accident or like bites the breast too hard or whatever, makes a mistake. That's such a weird mistake. Like they're just making boo-boos. Like it's errors. And like that's all that we're doing as humans. And I feel like if you can just give yourself grace, forgive your parents, forgive yourself, and just, like you said, release it with love and give it to the world, like brand new start, baby. You know?
Here's what I've realized over the years. I've realized that if I ever judge another human, for anything, for cutting me off on the freeway, for yelling at me at a grocery store line, for selling me a child. Okay. Now, don't hate me for saying this,
Different
guys.
level of forgiveness.
I've literally put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that innocence is preserved. Right. So don't get me wrong saying, Paul's a sympathizer. It's important to understand that I am not a sympathizer in any way of anybody who ever hurts a child.
Yeah.
I've literally put my life in danger hundreds of times to ensure that innocence is preserved. However, I've come to an understanding that if I ever judge another human, whether it's for cutting me off on the freeway, whether it's for yelling at me at a grocery store line, whether it's for, selling me a child, if I'm ever judging another human being, there's a 100% chance that I don't have all the facts. There's only one person in the universe that knows everything about everything that's going on, and that's not me, right? I don't know. I don't know if that guy cutting me off on the freeway, I don't know if his wife's in the hospital and he's rushing. He might just be an asshole. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that guy selling me a child was likely trafficked as a child himself. That perpetrator was likely a victim himself. Now, doesn't make their actions okay, because there are a huge percentage, the majority of people who have been abused as children grow up to be protectors.
Yeah.
In fact, the majority of my undercover operators were abused as children themselves, and they've literally now putting their life in danger to ensure that innocence is preserved. However, it's important to understand that in that situation, if not given the love, the help, the healing that they need, 1 out of every 3 will become a contact offender in verbally, physically, sexually abusing a child. Now, guys are like, I don't want to talk about that. Guess what? Talking about it takes it from 1 in 3 to about 1 in 100.
Yeah.
Right? Your chances of passing on that trauma by just simply saying, hey, you know what? That thing that happened to me as a child when I was 8 by my uncle, and people are like, I don't want to talk about that. That'll make me less of a man. No, it won't. You were 8. That was a horrible thing that happened because of somebody that was holding on to a lot of trauma themselves. Now, forgiveness does not make the action okay.
Correct.
It doesn't mean that guy doesn't go to jail so that he can't negatively affect lives of others. He can't harm innocence again, right?
Yeah.
But forgiveness, even when Yeshua says forgive 70 times 7, it's not about the other person's salvation. It's about your own. It's in releasing and forgiving is getting rid of all that toxicity in your own life so that it's not coming out in anger issues and addiction issues and anxiety and depression, all this stuff that people deal with because they're holding on to all this pain. So releasing that in a spirit of love, in a spirit of peace, with grace, releasing what they did, everything of our past, whether it was something that I did or something that was done to me, everything can be forgiven. Everything can be released. Both are going to require the help of God to do so.
Yeah.
But living in that state of forgiveness for yourself and others is the only way to break free of all that toxicity and make sure that those things never get transferred on to the next generation.
Yeah. So real, man. I read this book by Dale Carnegie, and the 2 things that it said in there that really stuck with me were shut the iron doors on the past, close it shut, and then just accept what is. Like if you just accept that we're here right now having this conversation. I'm 28. I don't know how old you are, but like we're here right now. This is what it is. You know what I mean? We can't change what happened yesterday. I can't go back 20 minutes.
Yep.
And I think that's just such a beautiful way to just approach your life, which it sounds like you've been doing, at a different level. What I want to talk to you about is your personal safety, because it sounds like you've put your your life and your family's life at risk to some degree, because you've put a lot of people behind bars, wrong, rightfully so, I think. So have you had any crazy, dangerous experiences with people trying to hurt you, hurt your family? Like, what does that side of the life look like?
Yeah, the most dangerous places I've been have been in undercover missions. I've had multiple ones where I've had guns on us and some pretty really hairy situations. And this is the reason why I didn't want my real name on the Sound of Freedom in the beginning. I said, listen, let's just call him Pablo Delgado, right? And I wasn't even going to have my name in the credits, but then we realized as time progressed that, and this was a conversation with my now wife and my kids. They said, you need to go public. You need to share these stories, because it's no more dangerous for me now than some federal judge, that puts guys behind bars, right? There's no more danger there. And and here's the real answer. You ready for the real answer?
Yes.
Okay. I'll answer it with this story. I was in Haiti. I had a new team that hadn't done any work with me. And we were about 2 a.m, hadn't found any traffickers. And I said to these guys, guys, can I take lead? Are you good with that? And they said, yeah. We want to see what you do. We've heard you're really, really good at this. I said, okay. I said, you need to follow exactly what I say. I said, first things first, I need you to understand that I believe in God. I said, most people believe in a supreme being. Some people call it the universe or Jehovah or Elohim, whatever. I says, God exists and cares more about these children than you and I ever could. So if you're okay with it, or even if you're not, I'm going to start out by asking for some help. So here we are, 2 a.m., downtown Port-au-Prince, Haiti, the darkest, most voodoo-infested place in the Western Hemisphere. And we take off our hats and offer up a prayer. And then I said, guys, now I need you to understand how I see fear and faith. I said, most people think that faith is going to church and asking God to fix things in their life that they don't believe are going to be fixed. That's not faith. That's blind hope, right? Yeah. Faith is a principle of power. Next to unconditional love, it's the most powerful law in the universe. And it's simply this. It's the unwavering conviction of what I want to have happen will happen. In John chapter 5, it says, ask in faith, nothing wavering. The problem is that most people have a hard time with unwavering faith about anything. Should I start this new job? Should I marry this woman? I think that it's because they don't know if what they want is in line with what their God wants, God wants, right, in their life. And they don't know that they're worthy of those things or whatever else. And so it's hard for them to have that unwavering faith. When it comes to the rescue of these kids, I don't care if you think that God is a man or a woman or a star or a light or a whatever. There is not a supreme creator power of the universe that's okay with an 8-year-old being abused, right? So it's easy for me to have unwavering conviction that I'm going to find those kids. And this is really goes back into what we talked about earlier with my friend that was talking about, are you listening, and tuning into that stillness. This was the most powerful example of my life of being able to be truly in tune and truly led. I said, God knows exactly where these kids are. And so I said, it's also important to understand that fear and faith cannot exist in the same person at the same time. The reason behind it is that in a way, they're the same power. People who believe bad things will happen actually attract them to them. People who believe good things actually attract them to them, right? And because of that, I told these Navy SEALs there, I said, listen, I feel safer right here, 2 a.m., downtown Port-au-Prince, Haiti, than I do sitting in my office in Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Because I believe that what we are doing is ordained by God, that we are protected by a power greater than any of us could ever imagine. And I've seen more miracles in that work of finding those kids than everything else in my entire life. And so I said, these guys are like, okay, dude, just drive. Okay. I says, okay, let's go. Yeah. So I told the guy, let's drive forward, and he's driving, and I said, okay, stop right there. They said that the motorcycle gang, the Black Alley. I said, yeah, right there. He said, what are you going to do? I said, that guy knows something. I could feel it because I was just tuning in, right? He said, this is a dangerous area. He says, we need to survey the area first, make sure we're safe. I said, no, we don't have time for that. He's going to be gone.
Yeah.
I said, in fact, you guys are going to intimidate him. These are big Navy SEAL guys or big muscle. I'm just me, right? I said, you guys are going to intimidate him. I said, I'm going to go out and talk to him myself. And this one dude, he's like, Paul, are you stupid? I said, look, I'll buy you pink panties when we get home. I don't have 2 weeks to find out who's selling kids.
Yeah.
I said, that guy knows something. And I walk up, this guy, he's on the motorcycle, and he lifts up his shirt, and there's a gun that's tucked right in his shorts. And I'm just listening. I give to my heart, and I pull out a bill. I think it was like a $100 bill. I give him a $100 bill. He said, what's that for? I says, that's for you. You keep it. I said, I have another one for you if you can help me with something. I got a friend in the U.S. He's got a lot of money. He's wanting me to help set up a party for him. He likes 10-year-olds. I says, if you'd help me find somebody who's got what he's looking for, I'll pay you another $100. He goes, I know exactly who you should talk. I knew he did. Through he connected me with a lady who ran a strip club who was selling kids. We ended up taking down the largest trafficking network, one of the largest trafficking networks in all of the Caribbean, including 4 corrupt judges, federal judges, as part of this takedown, all because of that connection with that guy that night that connected us with all the rest.
And had you not gotten out of the car and just walked up to him, that would have never happened.
Never would have happened, and it's the answer to the question of, from a safety standpoint, if I walked out of here today and somebody took me out, they took me out, right? Yeah. I truly believe that the second that my mission is over on this life, I will be done.
Yeah.
And not 1 second before.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
Yes, I'm going to do things that are going to keep me safe. Yeah. Yes, every one of my kids are trained in Krav Maga and Special Forces stuff. Badass. Yeah. I don't know if your listeners ever heard of Krav, but I talk about this. The Sound of Freedom book that's coming out isn't just about the rescue missions. I go into depth into things that parents could do to keep their kids safe. And the beginning part is everything from situational awareness to understanding different types of hand-to-hand combat. Yeah. The end is all about liberating humanity and what do we need to do to help humanity heal, etc. Yeah. But I talk in there about Krav, where, typical martial arts are bow to your sensei, 3 points when you have a kick to the leg or whatever. Krav is break to their head, go home to your family, right? Gosh. It's Israeli Special Forces hand-to-hand combat, and it's the most lethal on earth. Every move, they don't talk, they don't see, they don't walk, in fact, these are things that are illegal in the ring in other martial arts because people, you can take them out quick, right? Yeah. Well, one of the top Krav trainers in the world, it happened to live fairly close to me, and we've been training for a long, long time. And so all of my kids, my daughter, they're beyond badass. My daughter's barely 100 pounds, and I would put her in an MMA ring anywhere with anyone. She is beyond badass. She can be anywhere in the world, and I feel bad for whoever decides to sneak up on her.
Dang, yeah, don't mess with the Hutchinsons.
That's right.
That'll be your next movie. Don't mess with the Hutchinsons. That's so funny. Dude, you mentioned Jeffrey Epstein. Complete switch. Uh-huh. What's your take on Jeffrey Epstein, and do you think he actually committed suicide?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
No way.
Go.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. First of all, not only did he not commit suicide, this wasn't his operation. None of it was from the beginning. You want to really go down a rabbit hole? Start looking into not only the people that were there, but let me just phrase it this way, okay? If you were a very powerful entity, whether that's a Rothschild or a Bilderberg group or a 3-letter agency, let's say that you were an agency or an entity that wanted to have full control of the votes, of the direction of a senator, of a congressman, of a federal judge. If you wanted their votes forever and control them, you get them on film with a 12-year-old. It's been in the CIA's book of dirty tricks for a long, long time. Yeah. Of this is what blackmail looks like. This is how you do it. It's been there for a long time. And sadly, in situations like this, children are the ones that make that happen. Here's the sad thing on the Epstein situation.
Yeah.
I actually don't think we're ever going to get all the footage. We're not going to get all the names because no matter who's in the White House, you know, I'm a big fan of what Trump has done to fight child trafficking. Huge fan, right? But no matter who's in the White House, that element of blackmail and control holds more weight than throwing a bunch of people in prison, right? You got a billionaire who's been on that island many, many, many times.
Yeah.
What would you do as a multi-billionaire to make sure that that information isn't out? You do whatever. You put your money wherever you need to put it. You support whatever agenda you need to put. You step right in line, just like any politician that's been there, just like any royalty that's been there, right? So if you are an agency that is wanting to maintain that level of control, it's better to keep those people out on the streets. Otherwise, you put them all in jail and you have to replace them with a bunch of other people that you need to get more control over.
Yeah.
So,
dang.
Yeah.
That's real. That's so interesting. I'm trying to think if I have any things I want to talk about that are very relevant to that with Epstein. Let me just see.
Well, and beyond the Epstein thing, you know, we're seeing the P. Diddy thing front and center, right?
Let's go there.
Yeah. I mean, sadly, the most valuable thing that the feds got out of the P. Diddy situation was all of that footage.
Yeah.
Why? So you could control a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, and we saw what happened to him. It took him down immediately.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on Trump's relationship with Epstein?
I'll just put it this way. I don't know because I haven't seen any of the stuff. I do know that corruption has gone to the top in many administrations. There's never been a president that has done more good to fight child trafficking than Donald Trump, because he's got this he's like beyond the fray. He's like, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm gonna do whatever has to be done to drain the swamp, etc. However, this is important. There were people that were working, some of the actors and others in Sound of Freedom who truly feel like if you voted left, then you're probably a pedophile, right? And I told him, I said, guys, we've arrested just as many people on the right as we have the left.
Yeah.
You know, the border wall issue should have never been a political issue.
Right.
This is a human trafficking issue. Literally for the last 4 years, you know, during that open border policy, there were over 100,000 children a year that were undocumented, unaccompanied minors being brought across the border.
Yeah.
And sadly, the State Department already admitted that they lost like 85,000 of them, and then their updated numbers, another 200, almost 300,000 children that they didn't have court dates for, they couldn't find, etc. These are huge numbers. And here's what's happening. And I know this because I've literally been in Latin America for the last few years working on a lot of this stuff, helping change policies, et cetera, down there. Well, every single day over that 4-year period with the open border, every single day, children were being taken, not just parents giving them up for money, whatever. Children were being taken from healthy homes.
Yeah.
I didn't say wealthy homes. These are poor families, but they had a mom and a dad and they had love in the home. They were taken, they were drugged, they were raped. And then they were controlled. They were saying, listen, I know where your mother lives. I know where your sister goes to school. You don't want something bad to happen to them, do you? And so you're going to do exactly what we did. And literally within a few weeks, these kids are completely compliant. Yeah. They bring them up to the border. They give them a phone number and an address on a piece of paper of their new quote unquote sponsor. These sponsors were not vetted by FBI background checks at all. Now, some of them were well-meaning families that wanted to take these kids in. Sadly, you can look at the reports. There were entire communities where people would bring in these kids, and 90% of them would run away within a week or two. Why? Because they were told by their traffickers, if you don't report to this house and this number of this people, then bad things will happen to your family. And they're being controlled through fear, through drugs, through manipulation. etc. And so it's sad what's been going on there, and that should have never been a political issue. It's a human trafficking issue, and hopefully we can fix what's gone on and find where those kids are.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the things, like the most important things that Trump is actually doing to stop human trafficking or child trafficking right now?
Well, shutting down the border wall was number
was
one.
Yeah.
By far number one. And, the stiffening the penalties. I love what DeSantis did in Florida. Let's castrate him. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
If you misuse it, you lose it. How about that? That should be the slogan.
Right. I like that. I like that. Yeah, those are good. Those are good methods. Dude, we have like 4 minutes left, but I want to talk about your book. Because awesome. I know, dude, yeah. So besides child trafficking, all the incredible work you've done with Sound of Freedom and the foundation, you're a business ninja. Like that's primarily, I think, what your background is like you build companies. Mm-hmm. So you have a new book coming out that's more directed towards business. Is that right? I do.
Well, I've got the Sound of Freedom is coming out this next month in July. Yeah. So about the time that this drops, you'll be able to go into Amazon, find the Sound of Freedom there. You could go to sofbook.com and or just go to Liberating Humanity and you can get pre-order it there. But that's going to be some powerful stuff to keep your kids safe, and it's going to be it will be absolutely. If you thought the movie was good, this is a 10x on that with what's in the book. However, end of this year, early next year, I'll have finished, and it'll be the book on capitalism. And I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to call it infinite wealth, or compassionate or conscious capitalism. But the nexus of the book is helping entrepreneurs understand how they can create infinite abundance in their financial life while doing infinite good for humanity. My chapter 1 is your economics teacher lied to you, right? Scarcity versus abundance. And because you have to change your relationship with money if you're going to attract money into your life. And so if you think that the only way you can get ahead, if you only way that somebody makes $10 million is that $10 million has to be out of the pockets of other people, you've got it wrong. You could create billions of dollars of net worth for yourself while creating tens of billions of dollars worth of value for humanity.
Paul, dude, I'm so grateful that you came and spent the time here. For those of the people that are watching that don't follow you, where can they find you online?
Anywhere online, just type in Liberating Humanity. If had any social media, just type in Liberating and I come up first. So Liberating Humanity on Instagram and Facebook. I think on LinkedIn I'm still Paul Hutchinson, but or just go to liberatinghumanity.com. You can get information on the retreats. You can get information on the books and everything you need to do, and you'll have all of the podcasts. Even a link to this one will be in there. Anybody I've been on will be on there.
That's amazing. And my last thing that I want to end with is, because most of our audience is 18 to 35 male. Any advice for a young man that's trying to figure out what to do in their life?
Absolutely. Here's the thing. When I was a young man, I actually wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a pediatric cardiologist, and I got in a major car accident. I severed all the tendons in my hand, and they didn't know if I'd have the dexterity to be a surgeon. They said, well, you could be a regular doctor. I said, I don't want to be a regular anything. I want to be a surgeon and a heart surgeon and one that helped kids. And so I said, if I'm going to be the garbage man, I'm going to own the dump. That's just how I think. And I think that number one is so important for you to find a dream that is so big that it scares you, right? Something that you're like, wow, I don't even imagine, that would be so amazing. And then really tune into it. In fact, I don't have time for the story here, but next time I come on, remind me to tell you a story about my ex-wife and it being an NFL cheerleader and all of that. And literally everything is about visualization of where you want to be. You figure out exactly what it is that you want, whatever it is. Whether it is you want to be the next president, you want to walk on the moon, whatever it is, find something that you want and ask yourself the question: if time and money were no issue, what would I dream? And then identify what that dream is, and then just decide, you know what? Visualize it every single day, every morning, every night. Visualize that dream, and then meditate, tune into that still small voice of truth, and you'll find that literally the forces of the universe will come together to create that reality in your life.
Guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you guys go follow Paul. Check out The Sound of Freedom, his incredible new book coming out. next year too called Conscious Capitalism. Maybe.
Yeah, the Sound of Freedom right now.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Please leave a review, subscribe, go check out his foundation. I'll drop all the links down below, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.